Before we get started, I wanted to mention just a few bits of housekeeping. The first is you may have noticed that this webinar is only 30 minutes. We really feel that your time is precious, and we know that it's hard to get this into your day, so we're going to really try to stick to that 30 minutes. You will get a copy of the webinar and the slides after the webinar has ended. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please type it into the chat window. If I don't get to it during today's question and answer section, I will make sure that I or one of my colleagues will get back to you. So as I mentioned, my name is Rachel Culler, and I'm the head of product marketing at TradeShift. I've been part of process-related change management throughout my days of consulting and strategy, and I've even been directly involved in invoice processing as a business approver. So I've experienced firsthand some of the pains of doing that and some of the positive impact when you have a good solution that helps with efficiency and cost reduction. I've also worked with our delivery team at TradeShift to understand what's really been working to get suppliers on board for all of our different customers across different industries, across different geographies. And I've also been on calls with suppliers, hearing what is and isn't working for them when it comes to onboarding. So I'll be sharing some of that with you today. As you can see from our agenda, we're going to be talking about how you can radically improve your supplier onboarding rates, starting with how are things really looking today with supplier onboarding, and then going straight into what you can do to improve your numbers and get more of your suppliers on board. I will be doing some demonstrations using the TradeShift platform just to kind of highlight and show you what some of these techniques might look like in action. But these best practice approaches are definitely things that you can take home and start using today with just about any solution. So finally, I'm going to tell you about a customer of ours and how we radically changed their supplier involvement and really help them achieve their KPIs and make their business case in a way they hadn't been able to using traditional supplier onboarding methods. One thing before we get started, we have a new webinar registration process that I wanted to share with you. We are going to require that you purchase 3 webinars as part of this process. You're going to need to sign up. There's a commercial agreement that we can get to you. We are going to have to charge you for every webinar you watch, and there's some additional kind of commands and capabilities you're going to need to learn. Okay, I'm just kidding. But unfortunately, as you probably know, there are other solutions out there that have these kind of requirements for suppliers to sign up with them. They have to, pay for what they're using in advance. They have some potentially complicated steps to go through and things to learn. They might need to bring their legal department in to help with commercial contracts. So, these are some of the kind of fundamental barriers that we know have gotten in the way of supplier onboarding. We're not going to talk as much about things like fee-free for suppliers. We know you guys have heard that before, but it is something we wanted to touch on. I do want to briefly talk a little bit about TradeShift for those of you that aren't as familiar. We are a solution that helps businesses all over the globe connect, transact, and collaborate, and driving efficiencies and new value in the purchase-to-pay process. We have an award-winning solution that's been applauded by industry leaders, customers, and suppliers as being easy to use, mobile-friendly, incredibly efficient. And our mission really is to connect every business in the world and create value for both enterprises and their suppliers, which is part of, for example, why we don't charge supplier fees. Our solution covers globally compliant invoicing and purchase order management under our e-document exchange capability. We also offer collaborative workflow for straight-through processing and fast approvals, early payment solutions like dynamic discounting and supply chain financing, and CloudScan, which offers not only a solution for PDFs and paper invoice capture, but also a new way to onboard suppliers, which we're going to share with you later. We also have an app marketplace built on our cloud-based platform where users can activate additional capabilities like QuickBooks integration. And finally, I did want to mention that our TradeShift Studio service, which you may have seen some of the press around recently, is available to create new apps that integrate seamlessly with TradeShift, are easy for your users to work with, and address your company's unique challenges. So enough about us. Why are we here today? As study after study shows, the biggest barriers to e-invoicing come down to supplier participation. We know this, and some of the best and brightest minds have been working on this problem, trying to solve it. Companies just like yours looking for solutions. So what's been happening? Has this been solved? Have we figured it out? If your numbers aren't what you were hoping for, you're not alone. And here are just a few examples. a Fortune 500 company that onboarded only 90 suppliers in 3 years. Certainly not what they were hoping for. And another that had just over 400 suppliers onboarded in their solution in 4 years. So really kind of, not what we're hoping for. And even if you set aside these specific examples, we know from Ardent Partners' recent study and others that even the very best-in-class enterprises have just 40% of their suppliers submitting e-invoices, and the average is only 8.5%. You can imagine, and you all know, the impact of this problem is big. And it's big for your bottom line. We'll take a recent customer case study I just wanted to mention. It is a company with over $5 billion in annual spend, and Tradeshift connected them with a consulting service that estimated with savings from moving off paper, reducing invoice exceptions through a strong API automation solution, driving more early payments discount capture as a result, and also by implementing supply chain financing, that there was an opportunity at the low end for $15 million per year in savings and $225 million in revenue. That's obviously not small numbers. We're looking at a business value of $240 million per year. But if this company was looking at an 8.5 average supplier onboarding rate, the lost value could be well over $200 million. So when we talk about supplier onboarding, this isn't just about kind of a general idea, hey, it'd be great to get more people participating. As you well know, it's really about the bottom line. I'm going to be focusing primarily today on some approaches for onboarding related to technology solutions and things you can do within your AP automation or P2P solution. But I did want to touch on a couple of best practices that we've been using. It's funny, I was actually speaking with someone yesterday in delivery, and we were talking about this slide, and I said, do I really need to show this? Isn't this stuff kind of obvious? And they said, no, you know what, Rachel, this is new. This is things people haven't been doing. It's well worth talking about. So I decided to take their advice and share this with you. So first we see about managing data effectively. Often a barrier to getting suppliers on board is just that companies don't have the contact information for them. That the supplier master data files are messy, there are duplicates, there are issues with how current the records are, not all of the email addresses that are there are valid. These are probably issues that are not new to you. Of course, fundamentally, it's a great idea to have a good supplier management solution in place to limit this issue. But assuming that you're like many of the companies we're talking to today, this is what you're facing. And you may need to enrich your current supplier master data with additional contact information. And so really the first step in your process needs to be taking a good look at how is your data file and what are some things that you can do to make sure that you can reach not just those top suppliers that you may have already tried to onboard in the past with more of a one-on-one solution, but also your long tail of suppliers, those that are, some of which are going to bring you a lot of value in terms of your early payment solution, like dynamic discounting, and this is a key part of that process. We also strongly advise that companies consider how they can use what we traditionally think of as marketing techniques to raise supplier awareness about the solution that's now available to them, drive interest, leverage what we're learning about the consumer psychology of response and habit forming and all of that, using prompts like direct mail, email, actually even search engine marketing, which may not be something you ever thought of in conjunction with your supplier onboarding, using marketing automation solutions to track which emails are most effective and getting your particular unique supplier base interested in signing up to the solution, and even using social media and other kind of web presence types of approaches to get the message out about what your company is doing and why it is going to be such a great value for your suppliers to get on board. So with that kind of baseline foundation in mind, I'm going to move into the part that we kind of promised you in advance, which is these 5 ways to get more of your suppliers onboarded. And these are all things, as I mentioned, that depending upon your solution may be harder or easier to do, but contain a lot of best practices that you should be able to take back with you today and start using. The first thing we're going to discuss is ways that you can actually use paper and PDFs to your advantage. I know that we think of those as a pain point, but believe it or not, there are things we can do to use that for onboarding. Innovative ways to bring suppliers in before they even realize what's happening by seizing kind of trigger-based moments and interactions to move them onto your program. the idea that we can leverage kind of bringing in new suppliers to also onboard. Of course, there are things that I'm going to mention related to early payments and how that can be an onboarding path. And finally, I'm going to talk about the value of really having a true many-to-many supplier network that has simple one-click connection processes. So, using paper and PDFs to your advantage. Every supplier can start using TradeShift right away, even with paper and PDFs. And here's how we make sure that they may start with paper, but they end up fully onboarded to e-invoicing. CloudScan is our industry-leading document capture solution. We use artificial intelligence and machine learning on top of OCR technology to convert PDFs and scanned paper into electronic invoices. We have some really unique things about our solution, and one of them is that we can actually send scanned documents back to your supplier to review and correct, or you can choose to have your AP department or shared service center do that validation. And we also use our solution to convert your suppliers to electronic invoicing users, which is something you're probably not going to hear scanning providers who profit from your paper talking much about. And so what you can see here is whether the supplier validates or your AP department validates. If it's a supplier that's sending in a PDF or a paper invoice into CloudScan, it then leads to an invitation for them to join TradeShift. And I'm going to show you what this might look like. So in this case, we see that there's a supplier called the Cleaning Guy that has submitted a PDF invoice to BigCo, their customer, and this invoice needs to be validated before it can be delivered, so the supplier is being asked to validate the invoice. And as you can see, they can, they can view their original PDF invoice, and they can see how that's been communicated and translated by CloudScan into an electronic invoice. You can see things like the PO number here matching. By the way, TradeShift has functionality that we call a business firewall, which lets you make sure that no invoices come in your front door unless they have all of the required information that's important for your business practices. So here in this case, I'm just going to quickly take care of this. There's a registration number missing. That's something that BigCo requires. So the supplier will get that filled in. And then after validating, we'll go ahead and click to deliver that, and immediately they receive an offer to participate in electronic invoicing. And this really takes advantage of one of those opportunities of a process that typically is really an efficiency detractor, suppliers sending PDF and paper, and turns it into an onboarding opportunity. And on a related note, there are a number of kind of what we call trigger-based moments that an interaction with a supplier who's not currently using your AP automation solution can be onboarded. And one of those is purchase orders. We've really seen great success with POs leading to onboarding, which of course then also leads to straight-through processing. We all like having compliance with POs and ways for suppliers to do PO flips to ensure that everything matches up. So, you know, really what we're talking about here is you may have a supplier that you send a purchase order via TradeShift. They'll receive an email prompting them to review that. And again, just to kind of show you what this might look like, here is a company that has received a purchase order from BigCo via TradeShift. They're going to click to respond to this order because, of course, they want that business. They want to be paid. And come to our TradeShift interface, which we've designed, of course, to be very easy to use. So they're not going to, you know, have too much trouble seeing what's going on here, and can go ahead and create an invoice, and in doing that also be onboarded to the platform. Okay. Other instances that you could use this type of kind of trigger-based onboarding might be, for example, if there's an invoice that has reached your system and back-end ERP solution through current processes before you've fully implemented AP automation or other solutions related to that. You can actually send a note to a supplier letting them know that they had an invoice that was rejected. And this is a great way to get attention. Of course, again, suppliers want to get paid. And so if you let them know that they've got an action required to make that happen, they're going to have a lot of motivation to go ahead and click to provide the missing details on that invoice, which again leads to another opportunity for them to be brought into your system. The next point I wanted to touch on is bringing in new suppliers. And I want to mention we're going to be describing this process in terms of what happens if you have a new supplier that you're going to have work with your company that you need to vet, due diligence on, bring in. However, we've also seen some customers choose to use this type of functionality to clean up their existing master data file by getting the right information from suppliers that might not be records. So let me again, I'm going to show you what this kind of might look like. And the idea here is that your new supplier that wants to work with you would receive an email similar to ones you've seen in the other demonstrations. They could click on that email and be brought to a page like this on TradeShift, where they can be asked to fill out the information that you need to get them set up in your system. This could include, of course, W-9 type of information, contact information. There might be something about your business terms or minority certification. This type of approach, of course, can be customized to the information you need, and as they go ahead and fill this out and then proceed through the different steps, the last thing that happens is, yep, they get invited to join TradeShift. So not only do you now have a supplier registration process that can go through workflow and make sure you have only clean, complete, and correct supplier information in your back-end ERP system, you've also now found another way to get these suppliers onboarded to your AP automation. Early payments is a topic that I know from looking at the attendee list, a lot of you are very interested in, which we think is great. It's really something that brings businesses a lot of value, and it also brings suppliers a lot of value. And if you've got a supplier that's like many in situations where cash flow is really important to them, they'd like to be paid sooner, using an offer for dynamic discounting or supply chain financing is another way that you can bring them into your automation solution. And in addition to we show an email here, there are other ways that you can direct the user to sign up for early payments, and along with that, your automation solution. For example, some of the marketing techniques that I mentioned earlier that really can be a little bit less traditional and get suppliers aware of what you're doing and how they can join. The last thing I wanted to mention, and I know I'm going a little fast here, but I do want to make sure we have time for questions, is the idea that when it comes to bringing suppliers on board and getting companies to work with you, of course, it's really important for it to be as easy as possible. So the fewer steps they have to go through, the more likely that you're going to be able to quickly and easily get, as I mentioned, not just those high-value suppliers, but really the entire long tail onto your solution, so that you can be getting value from those suppliers through early payments. You can have straight-through processing at higher rates and meet all of those key kind of KPIs and business goals you have. So this, of course, is something that at TradeShift we really believe in. This is the last demonstration I'm going to show you. And here I'm logged in as Soraya Smith, a company that works with a number of different enterprises. You can see here in my recent activity, for instance, I've sent an invoice. I have a new customer I'm working with on TradeShift, and I've also had a purchase order that I've accepted. And if I go to connections here, let's say I'm interested in connecting with a company that has just started using the solution. Well, all I have to do is search for them, and let's say I'm connecting with Succeed. One click, and then all I have to do is hit connect, and I now can immediately transact as Soraya Smith with Succeed. If Succeed has gone ahead and set up a system with TradeShift where they've implemented their business rules, as I alluded to before, right away any invoices I send will be required to have all of that information you might like, such as a PO number. You might require a person reference. We have some customers that require different other identifiers or have requirements around the format of certain information that's entered. So really, with just an extremely fast process of searching for that company and hitting connect, similar to what you might do with a traditional social networking solution today, this supplier is now going to be able to transact with Succeed and do so in a way that is efficient, effective, and again helps them meet their business goals, which is something, of course, that we all want. I promised a case study. I mentioned earlier that there was a company that had 20,000 suppliers and really struggled to onboard. They had fewer than 100 suppliers per year. After 4 years, they only had 400. So how do we do applying these techniques that I've described to you today? Things like the trigger-based invitations, using marketing approaches, making sure that the early payments offers a way to onboard suppliers along with new supplier registration processes. You can see a dramatic difference. So here we have a rate of onboarding that's over 12 times as fast, and this is a curve that I think you probably all go home and hope that you can achieve when you look at kind of the chart of your suppliers coming onto your new solution. So, it is possible. We're happy to have brought these ideas to you. And again, just to kind of run through them one more time before we move to questions. We talked about using paper and PDF to your advantage, and we know that all of you have paper still coming in, you have PDFs still coming in. Isn't it great to know that you can take that process and not just get those invoices into your system through document capture, but also use it as a way to onboard suppliers? We also talked about trigger-based moments. So this is the idea that any interaction you have with a supplier, whether it's via email or the phone or even through kind of communicating through a broader marketing channel, is an opportunity to also bring them onto your solution. And for example, sending a purchase order and letting the supplier do PO flip to an invoice, it's a great double whammy, because not only do you get straight through processing and a great two-way or three-way match on the back end, you also have the chance to bring in a supplier onto your system. And similarly with anything that notifies the supplier there's an action required that's standing between them and getting their payment. I mean, it's just a really compelling reason for them to go through these steps. And since with a solution like TradeShift, and hopefully your solution is as simple, likely all they'll need to do is literally just provide a password to open an account. Next thing you know, they're on board. They don't even realize it's happened practically. We sometimes joke about it being non-boarding because your supplier is coming to the solution and don't even know that they've had to go through steps to onboard. Bringing in new suppliers, again, it's an opportunity to not just get all of the information you need to be compliant and do your due diligence, but also a way to bring companies onto your AP automation solution. And then luring with early payments offers, which of course there are a variety of ways to do. This is another approach that, again, you're really hitting at a key need for the supplier, so they're going to have a lot of motivation to follow through the steps to get more information, to send a request to participate, or take other actions that, again, can be linked to your automation solution, so that just by, one click and a password, they're suddenly on board and able to transact with you on that system and be compliant with your business rules, as well as, any government regulations you have set up to be covered. And finally, we really wanted to emphasize that it's ease of connection. It's when you talk about getting someone to do a new behavior, there's motivation, very important. We've talked about some ways to motivate. And then there's also how easy is it to do. And so we're big believers in making it as easy as possible. We've had some questions recently about the concept of supplier match. How much does it matter if the supplier I want to work with is already on the network of the solution provider? And the answer, honestly, is that it really depends. If you have a true many-to-many network with a simple connection mechanism, so that the supplier really does just need to search for you as a new customer, hit connect and be ready to interact, of course that's going to be a benefit for the process. On the other hand, if your supplier is, either has an official record with the solution but isn't actually transacting and invoicing through that solution, or if, as I've seen in many cases, there still are a number of additional steps and maybe even legal contracts to sign for them to start transacting with you on that network, the benefit just isn't as strong. So we love the fact that we can really bring suppliers in so easily and have them connect with you, and would just suggest that you think about ways that you can make it that easy for the supplier base that you have. So that concludes the webinar for today in terms of the material that I wanted to cover. So let me check to see if I've received any questions. And you can feel free to just enter those in the chat window if there's anything you'd like to ask. Okay, here I have a question coming in. It says, you mentioned using non-traditional marketing techniques. Do you have any examples of this in action? So yes, in fact, you may have seen recently some of our announcements about our relationship with the National Health Services in the UK and the work we're doing for them. We kicked that off in terms of supplier onboarding with, advertising, messaging, PR. We use some search engine marketing to get the word out. And believe it or not, and I almost fell out of my chair when I heard this, we had companies actively calling TradeShift support before they were even contacted by their customers saying, hey, I saw this, I heard about it, it looks great, I want to join, what can I do? Which was really great for us to see that that is an effective technique and can have a lot of reach. Okay, here is another question. Okay, so this question is, a number of the techniques you've listed require technology. Do they work with every system? And I assume that this question is probably mostly about things like the trigger-based onboarding, having an email or a process where when a supplier engages, there's an immediate link to onboard. The answer is from a technological perspective in terms of, the coding a programmer might do at the back end that works at any of these companies. It should be feasible. The reality is that with today's solutions, there aren't other providers doing this in the same way. So yes, it's possible. Is it available in your solution? You'd have to check. I'm pretty sure that TradeShift is leading the pack in this area. Okay, any other questions? I'll give everyone a minute. Okay, well, hopefully this has been an insightful session for you. I've really enjoyed the chance to share with you the techniques that we've been learning can really dramatically accelerate supplier onboarding so that you can achieve your business case, meet your KPIs, and have a successful project. As we mentioned, we will distribute this presentation after this is completed, so you can share that with your colleagues. You can certainly approach us with questions at any time. And oh, it looks like we have one other question, integration with financial packages. I take it that question is about if your early payment solutions are integrated with onboarding and with AP automation at TradeShift, and the answer to that is yes. We do make sure that if you're using our solution that the supplier can access all the different functionality, including finance-related solutions, and do that on TradeShift. Okay, and let me see. Okay, so we also had a question about the split of large suppliers who send directly from their ERP platform compared to smaller suppliers who might use our system by typing directly into our web form to submit invoices. And it's great to get this question because I always like the chance to point out that another element of supplier onboarding is making sure that no matter what a company is doing today, that they can get started right away. So at TradeShift, there are multiple options for integration. As this question alludes to, there's typing an invoice directly into the web form. There's also using an accounting system connector, like for Sage 50, QuickBooks, one of the other popular packages. We accept a large number of document formats that you can send to us, invoices through document file forwarding through something like SFTP or FTPS. You can also use our API for a more direct integration if that's the situation that you have. And of course, there's CloudScan. So if PDFs are something that your suppliers are using today and you want to immediately make sure that those arrive to your staff as electronic invoices, the great news is that you can just provide those companies with a CloudScan email that TradeShift will set you up with, and they will get the electronic invoice to validate. They'll have the chance to correct any missing information like PO numbers or person of reference, send that right to you, and be able to immediately be interacting as they then get moved on to true electronic invoicing. Another thing I would mention in terms of kind of the approach of getting people started quickly is that, with TradeShift, you don't have to actually finish your back-end full integration before suppliers can be onboarded and sent to you. So we have something that we call PDF streaming, and that's basically the idea that no matter what the current preferred integration is for a supplier, while you're working on deciding things like, how are you going to connect your HR system, what types of rules do you want for different branches, if you so choose, we can go ahead and get those suppliers so that they're connected to TradeShift, they're sending documents, and you just receive a PDF, or we have a PDF go through CloudScan right away so that there's not going to be a long delay. Okay, so one more question and then I'll wrap up. It's really great to see so much interest. Even though this webcast will be distributed, will it be repeated again? So we are repeating it in about 2.5 hours for our US audience. Beyond that, we're always, of course, wanting to bring the information to you that's most useful and interesting. So if it turns out that this is something people want to hear more, I'm sure that our marketing department will be more than happy to work with me and others to bring another one of these presentations to you. So I am going to have to wrap up here. Thank you so much for your interest and engagement. I'll take a look at the remaining questions afterwards, and we'll make sure we get you answers. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.